In this episode of the Marksville Wrestling Podcast, we will be reviewing the March 25th episode of Monday Night Raw and the March 29th episode of Friday Night Smackdown. You can expect full reviews of those shows in today's episode as we get hype. Only 5 more days until Wrestlemania. This is episode 7 of the Marksville Wrestling Podcast. My name is Owen. We'll be right back after this. If you're listening to the show on Google Podcasts, please note that the service is shutting down on April 2nd, 2024. The show will eventually go up on YouTube Music as a replacement, but in the meantime, please listen to the show on Deezer, Spotify, and YouTube. Back to the show. Well, hello and welcome back to the Marksville Wrestling Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, this is episode 7. My name is Owen, and we are only 5 days away from WrestleMania as I record this show. Pretty big deal, pretty incredible that we are so close to the showcase of the Immortals. Only 5 days away, emanating live at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on Saturday the 6th and Sunday the 7th of April. I will be there live, and I just cannot wait. So I decided I was going to do another hype episode, but this is going to be more reviews. The last episode was just generally a hype as in relation to the whole card, in relation to the event itself. I argued why I thought it could be the best WrestleMania of all time. This is going to be specific reviews for the March 25th episode of Monday Night Raw and the March 29th episode of Friday Night Smackdown. So those are kind of the penultimate shows as we head into the go-home shows this week. I should mention that Monday Night Raw, the go-home show review for that will be live on my podcast channels either the 3rd of April or the 4th of April. And then the Smackdown go-home show will not get a full review in the form of a podcast until after I return from Philadelphia, but you will be getting a condensed review of it on my YouTube page through the YouTube Shorts feature. That's at Marksville Wrestling on YouTube. And I should mention that because I'll be live in Philadelphia, I'll also be just kind of bringing you content from the show of shows, travel pictures, maybe some of the set, just what my view looks like from my seats, maybe quick reviews and stuff like that. So please keep an eye out for the Marksville Wrestling socials at Marksville Wrestling everywhere, Instagram, Mastodon, and YouTube. Also, patreon.com/Marksville Wrestling will be holding some exclusive content from WrestleMania Live that you can only find if you're subscribed over there. I appreciate the support as always. And then finally, I wanted to mention before we get into these reviews that Google Podcasts, like you heard at the beginning of the show, I'm sure, is shutting down. And as of April 2nd, 2024, they are basically phasing out Google Podcasts entirely, and YouTube Music is their alternative. So I personally am still working on getting Marksville up and running on YouTube Music. But in the meantime, please listen on YouTube, Deezer, and Spotify. Without further ado, I think that's all I've got for you right now. This is going to be a busy week, I'm sure, as you, a listener, a big wrestling fan, or I assume you are listening to the show. I'm sure you're excited. I'm excited for you, and I can't wait to be there and bring you some exclusive content starting the 4th of April into, of course, the 8th. So, without further ado, March 25th, 2024 episode of Monday Night Raw. That is the basically penultimate go-home show. The go-home show for Raw happened yesterday as I'm recording this, but this is the one before that, right? Penultimate. And this emanated live in Rosemont, Illinois at the Allstate Arena, which is more or less the home of CM Punk. Not at the United Center, and I do wonder if they booked this at the Allstate because of AEW's relation with the United Center, but maybe that's a little conspiratorial for me. Maybe it's just a size thing or a facilities thing. Maybe the, Allstate's better for their set design and whatnot. But in any case, the de facto home of CM Punk, because it is pretty much Chicago for all intents and purposes. So before we get into the review, I want to mention that this review I'm going to be working off of, it was written by Mike Tedesco with WrestleView.com. The review is still mine, but there's transcripts and high spots that Mike wrote in this article, and they're going to help me keep track as I break down the show for you. So please go check out this article. It is the WWE Raw results for 325, written by Mike Tedesco on WrestleV.com. Without further ado, to start out the show, we see a view of Lincoln Financial Field, which is the site of WrestleMania 40. We already know that, of course. There's already been some leaks of the set design, and I am going to post those on my social media when they're a little bit easier to see and less low resolution, because I don't want to be posting anything that you can't really decipher. So I don't want to leak any of those images until they are able to be viewed, accurately and just easy, coherently, just easy to see. But yeah, that stage has already kind of leaked at this point, and it's getting very hype. Everything, the magic's in the air, and they're kind of trying to get that feeling continuing to be put over, what with that view of the field at the beginning of this show, which again, not the go home show, but the one before it. So we start out with a view of CM Punk walking to the arena. As you do when you got a show in Chicago, you got to get that big hometown pop for CM Punk, which is what they did. But they actually start with a Cody Rhodes segment. He's obviously going to be in the main event of night 2, so you have to make him the sort of fulcrum point of your programming, especially this close into the show. So Cody comes out there. He asks Chicago what it wants to talk about. Basically, Cody goes on to say that he's in the final awkward 2 weeks before Mania. The time for talking is over and the time for fighting has arrived, so he doesn't feel like he has a lot to say. But last week on Smackdown and even before, Roman Reigns did say a lot, and he also spoke on the Pat McAfee show. And basically, Roman, when he spoke the week prior, he referred to Cody as a politician. And when they had a face-to-face confrontation on SmackDown, he doubled down on that statement. The crowd is really behind Cody, so they start chanting "Roman sucks." And then last week, Roman also said that Rhodes is making promises he cannot keep. And, Chicago should know that when Cody makes a promise, he keeps it. That's from Cody Rhodes himself. Cody goes on to say that there have been some unique asks. The other night, a man held up a sign asking if Rhodes would be his best man at his wedding. Rhodes is doing it and paying for the bachelor party. Another boy wanted him to be there for his birthday, so Cody is going. He will be bringing his kids to WrestleMania, and Cody does these things but doesn't want anything back. These things are lost on Reigns because Rhodes is doing them because he has to. Rhodes is out here pretending to be the champion because he isn't there. So Cody's basically telling us that he's the stand-in champion and he's doing the things that the champion should be doing. And Roman is obviously on that part-time schedule, so Cody's hinting at that fact. Cody fills up the ring with platitudes about Roman Reigns. He respects Roman, but he also knows that Reigns took away the biggest dream of his life last year. While he respects Roman, he also hates his guts. Cody understands why Reigns might hate him. He took away his chance to have a fight with The Rock, which they obviously booked as the biggest WrestleMania match of all time. Cody uses some colorful language here, but, this is a family-friendly show. Cody won the Royal Rumble, pointed at the sign, but if there's anything he learned from last year, it's that he cannot do this alone. So he has asked for nothing back as he does all these favors for us as the stand-in champion, but he's going to ask now. On April 6th, he asks the crowd, "Will you ride with me into my 2 matches?" My first match on April 6th. And then on April 7th, will you do the same in my fight against Roman Reigns? The crowd cheers. Cody is going to point to the Mania sign, and he wants the crowd to do the same. So obviously, in real life, Cody points to the sign, the crowd points as well. And I think we could have telegraphed that because he is over like Rover, and the fans are going to do whatever Cody asks them to do. But as he gets on to the sort of meaning of the 2 main events, The Rock comes out with his music. They basically just have a stare down in the middle of the ring. There's some The Rock takes his time to get to the ring, stands on the turnbuckles, stuff like that. But it ends up just being, in effect, a, Mexican standoff, if you will, like one of those Western movies. The Rock says something straight to Cody Rhodes' face, but we can't hear it because The Rock isn't holding a microphone. So Cody kind of steps back. He looks like it hit him pretty hard, whatever that was said to him. He's taken aback. The Rock turns around and walks to the back of the stage in the locker room, and then Cody's music plays. He gets out of the ring rather sheepishly and looks confused by what happened. So they will get into maybe what he could have said later in the show, but I think we'll find out likely at WrestleMania, if not on the Go Home show, which again will be reviewed for you later this week. Next up, we have Ricochet warming up backstage to build to his match against JD McDonough. Then we have backstage segment where an interviewer comes out to ask Rock why and what he said. Basically, and I should say that interviewer is Jackie Redmond. And then The Rock basically says, "Go ask Cody Rhodes," and walks off. So when he's asked exactly what he said, he will not admit it. He just asks you to go ask Cody Rhodes. So again, building intrigue and mystery to what was said there. Then we have the Judgment Day Clubhouse. That's one of their sort of recurring segments in WWE as of late. Rhea Ripley is with Dirty Dom and the gang. She knows that Mysterio has unfinished business with his father, Ray, and she's kind of getting into an argument with him because she would have helped interfere last week on SmackDown, but Dom apologizes. Damian Priest tells McDonough to handle Ricochet, and Finn Balor interjects by saying he is not happy that Mysterio and McDonough have looked like fools against Ricochet. Damian Priest has a plan for WrestleMania. McDonough says he has Ricochet's number, and Ripley tells them all to win. Mysterio assures her that they will. Next up, we have that match. Ricochet takes on JD McDonough with obviously Dirty Dominic Mysterio in his corner. I'm not going to recap the entire matches for this review just because there's so much heavy storyline content in this show, and of course the next 3 shows that we'll be reviewing. There's a lot of storyline content, so I don't want to really get hold off too much with that. I want to focus on it, and I want to therefore hold off on the wrestling content. So anyway, the finish here is that McDonough scales the ropes, Ricochet knocks him off to the canvas, then JD gets to his feet, but Ricochet crushes him with a shooting star press, and McDonough was actually standing when Ricochet hit it, so there's a little bit more force there, and gets the win via pinfall. CM Punk is walking around with a Chicago Cubs branded championship backstage in that segment. Then we have a trailer for the Bray Wyatt Becoming Immortal documentary narrated by The Undertaker, which debuts next Monday. That is the Monday after WrestleMania on Peacock. And in a pretty touching tribute, the Allstate Arena lights up with fireflies. Of course, rest in peace, Bray Wyatt. Next up, we have Jey Uso, main event Jey Uso, who is hyping up his match against Shinsuke Nakamura later in the night. Then we have CM Punk back in Chicago. Cult of Personality blasts through the speakers as always. He poses on the turnbuckles before walking into the ring. Then when Punk is in the ring, there's a huge chant. He, again, over like we're over here in his hometown. And Punk opens by saying, "Is it good to be alive on Monday in Chicago or what?" The crowd roars. The short answer is yes to the question, "Am I going to be at WrestleMania?" Punk says. "Everyone is asking how my elbow's doing. It's not great. I'm not medically cleared, but my mouth works," Punk says. So Punk goes on to say that people are wondering if he's going to host the show. 10 years ago, he thought that was beneath him, but now he only wants to be in front of the people. He wishes Mania was in Chicago. They tell him he's great in the ring, on the mic, and even on commentary, so why doesn't he try to be a referee? Is there a match in Mania that needs an impartial referee, he asks. A lot of people ask questions and talk about him. A lot of people, even if they hate him, they need to talk about him. So Punk putting himself over there with the, I attract any kind of publicity, good and bad. So people want to talk about me all the time. Punk calls over to Pat McAfee and mentions that Roman was a guest on his show. He doesn't listen to Pat McAfee's shows, but he does mention in a pretty funny segment to get some cheap heat that he listens to Jim Cornette podcasts. Reigns basically, he's bringing up Reigns to mention that when Reigns goes down at Mania, he basically implies that Reigns is going to go down at Mania, and that when he comes back up the card to make his way into the picture after losing to Cody, as Punk, implies he will, they will meet each other on that progression for Reigns. So he kind of just mentions that because, again, Reigns was on the Pat McAfee show, which is something Cody mentioned as well. But anyway, CM Punk uses this as a segue to bring up Seth Rollins. They go back. They don't see eye to eye. Punk feels like he has earned the right to wrestle and be in his position since he was 15, but he doesn't necessarily feel the same way about Seth Rollins. He goes on to mention The Rock. Someone who hasn't talked about CM Punk or said a word of him is The Rock. Punk would like to think that he remembers being face to face with him 10 years ago and realized that his arms were too short to box with God. That's the word he uses for The Rock. But then, he says, is Drew McIntyre. The crowd boos when they hear his name. And CM Punk goes on to say that when you have a problem in Chicago, you handle it face to face like a man. Then Drew's music hits. Punk basically tells the crew to turn off Drew's music. Punk says, while he may not be able to wrestle, he can beat Drew's bleep bleep. I'm sure you can guess what I mean. There's something about a donkey in there somewhere. But yeah, so McIntyre actually stays at arm's length from CM Punk, staying on the stage while Punk is in the ring. McIntyre says last time they were in the ring, he stomped Punk's injured arm. He prayed for that. Punk asks if he's a Scottish psychopath in a kilt or a troll in a skirt. McIntyre fights back by saying that he can be canceled for talking like that, which is a pretty funny social media reference, what with Drew McIntyre's gimmick and heat coming so often from social media. Really great character here from McIntyre, really a career renaissance if you ask me. But he goes on to walk around ringside and say that this is a divine intervention. He points to the checklist on the back of his shirt, which includes injuring CM Punk. But in the middle of that diatribe, Punk interjects by saying that he's never had to sell a t-shirt with another man's name on it. Drew says that for someone who is in straight edge, not drinking or doing drugs, he sure spends a lot of time in rehab. So this is just a crazy back and forth. Two guys throwing barbs at one another like it's going out of business, and it's just great stuff. McIntyre tells Punk that he doesn't hate him. In fact, he completes Drew McIntyre. CM Punk tells Chicago to boo him, and then McIntyre goes on to say that Punk is his muse. When he's lifting weights Punk could never do in his prime, he uses what he did to Punk to get through that last rep. At Chambers, the first man in and having a blasted eardrum, the thought of injuring Punk helped him persevere. Then CM Punk tells him to get in the ring, but McIntyre mentions he probably has a weapon. McIntyre sits on the table in a similar way to the CM Punk pipe bomb pose that we are now very familiar with, and says he wants Punk to have a front row seat at WrestleMania. Everyone will know that Drew McIntyre is the chosen one. Then CM Punk asks who chose Drew. He's implying Vince McMahon here, of course. What paragon of good virtue chose Drew? It wasn't the people of Chicago or San Antonio. And then Drew goes on to say that all Punk is good at is running his mouth. And that since Punk is only good at talking, he should be the guest commentator at WrestleMania. Burn It Down plays over the loudspeakers. That is, of course, Seth Rollins' music here. Seth freaking Rollins makes his way to the ring. The crowd sing along. Rollins welcomes to Chicago 2 Monday Night Rollins. And he says, now that we've firmly established whose show this is, has been, and will be, let's get into the rest of my promo. And then Rollins basically says if they're done trying to out-troll each other, they can get down to business between the three of them. If these two morons had a brain cell between them, he says, they would know you don't get to make decisions for the World Heavyweight title match if you're not in it. Since they want to take everyone's opinion into account except the champions, why don't they pull the people of Chicago? At WrestleMania, should CM Punk be on commentary? And the crowd gets a, somewhat large ovation, but not very loud. The crowd then chants referee, and Seth says that Punk has injured his counting arm, so therefore he can't do it. But then Punk drops down and counts with his left arm, and Punk pops up and says, this is going off the rails, but I could be objectively fair with the two of you. And Seth asks if Punk wants to know what he thinks. Punk says he does not. And Rollins says that he doesn't think anything of Punk. Punk hasn't crossed his mind since the last time they were in the ring and is a non-factor in his mind. If Punk wants to be a commentator or ref at WrestleMania, it does not matter to Rollins. Rollins says that people think he needs Punk, but the truth is that Punk needs Rollins. Having Punk narrate the match excites the both of them. The way things are going for Punk, this is the closest he'll get to a world title match in Mania, and Seth ends his sort of section of the promo to warn Punk to stay out of his way. CM Punk says it's decided and that he will put a headset on, sit next to Michael Cole and Pat McAfee, and therefore call the match at WrestleMania. Punk promises to do something that the both of them cannot do, and that is make Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre interesting. So pretty good barb there from him. Rollins failed to do that in Punk's 10-year absence, he implies, and Punk then tells the production crew to play his music and walks off. McIntyre tells Punk that he will not get the last word. Punk is obsessed with McIntyre and watches everything he does on WrestleMania. So again, another reference to social media there for Drew McIntyre's character. Seth Rollins super kicks Drew, delivers a stomp, and gets out of the ring before staring at CM Punk and walking off. So pretty big segment there. It does definitely seem like they hinted at Punk being a referee. I think they're going to pull the rug out from under us. And yeah, he's going to say that, he's a commentator going into it. But in reality, he won't be. He will actually be a ref. I'm not sure how they book that, but I do think that might be what happens. Although with his arm, it's very possible he doesn't, isn't able to be a ref. There's probably going to be a lot of brouhaha in that match anyway. So it's probably a good idea to not have him as a ref with his arm. But it did seem like they were building to that, and I think there could be a bait and switch angle here. Or a swerve, if you will. In a video segment, Jey Uso gets to go to WrestleMania and have his dream match against Jimmy. It's not fair, Jimmy says. Jay's dream has come true, and Nakamura's hasn't. So Shinsuke is going to come out and turn Jay's dream into a nightmare. Then we have Candice LeRae, and again, that match will be the main event, Nakamura versus Jey Uso. Candice LeRae with Indy Hartwell by her side takes on Ivy Nile with Maxine Dupree by her side, respectively, in a one-on-one match. Again, skipping through the wrestling a little bit, but the finish here comes when Candice LeRae basically drops down. She's clutching her knee. The referee checks on Ivy Nile, who's actually hurt on the other side, but then Nile gets in the ring and charges. The referee holds her back because he saw that injury. LeRae then rolls Nile up and gets her feet on the ropes for the win. LeRae celebrates, but a conflicted Indy Hartwell declines to celebrate her because of that dirty win there. So building some tension between the two. Obviously, if Indy's a babyface, she doesn't want Candice to engage in heel tactics. So that seems like they're building to something between the two of them, possibly in the future. Next up, we have a tag team match, which has DIY taking on the New Day And of course, the New Day are Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, as Big E is still out with his long-term injury. So the finish here comes when Gargano tags in off of Ciampa, double teams Xavier Woods with Ciampa, and Gargano hits the slice bread number 2 and gets the New Day out of the ring. Then Gargano hits them with a suicide dive, but all of a sudden, the Judgment Day head to ringside and attack all 4 men in the ring. The ref gets the bell, so it's a disqualification match. It ends in a disqualification. This was not a no DQ match, because if it was, then this disqualification wouldn't have happened. So the match is over. Tommaso Ciampa tries to fight back, but the rest of the Judgment Day overwhelm him. Dominic Mysterio hits Gargano with a frog splash. The Miz has seen enough, because The Miz, I should mention, is on commentary for this match, building with him and R-Truth as part of the Awesome Truth, who will be in that six-pack challenge for the tag team championships. The Miz sees enough and gets in the ring, but Priest stops him with the South of Heaven. Priest points at R-Truth, who's also at ringside, but R-Truth shouts that he's on commentary and therefore cannot fight. R-Truth begs for a commercial break, but the Judgment Day surround him. Damian Priest grabs R-Truth and throws him into the ring. R-Truth takes out JD McDonough and Dom Mysterio before taking Balor down, but Priest quickly attacks Truth and hits the Razor's Edge. Balor then finishes Truth off with a coup de grace, and the Judgment Day stand tall. All 3 of these teams, like I just mentioned, will be in a ladder match against Balor and Priest, which is the 6-pack tag team championship match at WrestleMania. Next up, we have more reference to the Cody Rock, feud here. Jackie Redmond asks the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes if, he can divulge what The Rock said to him. Cody says it's nothing he wants to repeat, but it was a promise that The Rock cannot keep. Pretty dubious there, pretty foreboding. Cody walks off. So again, we're going to hopefully have to see what happens there at WrestleMania. Kathy Kelly is backstage interviewing Gunther. She asks Gunther for a response to what Sammy said about taking him down at WrestleMania. Gunther says he would have answered, but Sammy actually stormed off like a child. His words were empty, Gunther says. Deep down, Zayn doesn't believe he can beat Gunther, and the people of Chicago don't believe it either. Gunther does not think Sammy can even beat Bronson Reed, who he will be facing later in the night. Andrade and Giovanni Vinci in their match. So Andrade obviously returning to WWE from AEW, and he's getting a match here against Giovanni Vinci. He was supposed to take on Ivar of the Viking Experience. Is that what they're called now? Viking Raiders. Sorry. I forgot that, they had that name change, and it was obviously very poorly received. So the Viking Raiders. Andrade was supposed to face Ivar, but Ivar was not medically cleared, so we get this match instead. The finish comes when Vinci elbows Andrade, shoves him into a corner. Andrade goes for a boot, but Vinci blocks it and pulls him in with a clothesline. Andrade fights back, but Giovanni Vinci eliminates him with a stiff chop, and Andrade stuns Vinci with a reverse elbow. Andrade hits a double arm suplex into a neck breaker, which he is calling the Message, to pick up the 1-2-3 pinfall victory. Next up, we have Women's World Champ Rhea Ripley with Dom Mysterio backstage. She makes her to the way to the ring, with Dom. Ripley has a brace on her left wrist. She's less than 2 weeks away from facing Becky. Ripley says to Dom that she feels like she's not getting enough attention. She feels like a certain someone isn't giving her full attention. Becky Lynch continues to fight week after week, but Ripley could have gotten her attention by attacking her during one of her many matches. She decided to be respectful instead, and now she's getting impatient because WrestleMania is just around the corner. Lynch should be giving Rhea her full attention, says Ripley. Mysterio takes the microphone, and the crowd starts to loudly boo him. Mysterio says Becky, and Becky Lynch's music immediately plays. She gets into the ring to say, "The man has come around to Chicago." Becky stares at Rhea And Lynch says that she doesn't have to wait for Rhea to have a 20-minute match to feel safe to come out and confront her. That's what Ripley has done to her. Becky could have never do that because Ripley doesn't compete on Raw anymore. Ripley asks why she would wrestle before the biggest match of her career. She doesn't have to prove herself week after week, she says. Becky says that that is the underlying problem. They have two different interpretations of what a champion is. To Ripley, it's posting herself online to get attention, but to Becky, it's busting her you-know-what night in and night out to prove herself. There's always going to be someone newer, younger, and hotter. But the long game is skill, merit, and survival, says Becky. It's how you come back from not being the chosen one. Rhea hasn't experienced that, says Becky. And at WrestleMania, the man will have to give her a new experience. So pretty good promo there from Becky. But Rhea says that Lynch might be right. She's been through everything. However, she wants to humiliate Becky and she wants Lynch to sit next to her daughter and listen to her call Ripley mommy, which is a big heat moment, right? Pretty big heat to mention a wrestler's kid, but also to mention them that way is definitely pretty crazy and vicious. Then a mommy chant fires up around the ring from the crowd, of course. But Rhea goes on to, just kind of shame Becky. But then Becky counters by basically saying that it might be a joke to Rhea, but it's not a joke to her. Then Rhea claims that she didn't attack Lynch out of respect, but basically she doesn't have any respect. She knows that if she attacked Lynch, there's no going back. After WrestleMania, neither of them will be the same again. Becky gets in Rhea's face and Mysterio kind of separates them. Mysterio gets in Lynch's face, but she punches him down. Ripley and Lynch begin to brawl in the ring before Ripley sends Lynch shoulder first into the ring post. Rhea checks on Mysterio at ringside. Lynch leaps off the steps but attacks them both, not just Rhea. Referees have to come out and separate them while Mysterio pulls Ripley away. Lynch breaks free, runs over Mysterio, and continues to brawl with Ripley until more referees are sent down to break it up. Sami Zayn walks backstage when he sees Chad Gable. They basically have a, interaction with, basically some good-natured sportsmanship. Sami knows what he has to do tonight, and he appreciates Gable for being respectful. And that, Gable basically tells Sami he needs to focus on the task at hand, and that is defeating Gunther at WrestleMania. They shake hands, pretty cool moment for the two men. I know a lot of people said Gable should be the one facing Gunther, but I think we should all be more than happy with Sami and Gunther. That's going to be an absolute banger of a match. Next up, we see Sami and Bronson Reed basically training respectively for their match against one another. Then after the break, we have Gunther coming out to the stage. Then we have that match, Bronson Reed and Sami Zayn in a singles match. Gunther observing the competition. To end the match, Bronson Reed heads to the top rope and connects with the Tsunami. Bronson Reed has pinned the number one contender for the IC championship, obviously Sami Zayn. Gunther laughs at the shortcomings of Sami Zayn and walks off. So pretty crazy here for Bronson Reed to, actually go over. Usually the babyface needs to get momentum and wins going into the show of shows. But I think they're really trying to build that doubt and show how sort of crafty and resilient and heelish Gunther really can be to try to get us to, be even more behind Sami Zayn, which I do think that helped with this. Then we have main event Jey Uso, who's backstage in the gorilla position. Seth Rollins comes up to him and says something doesn't feel right about tonight. But Seth says that he and Cody Rhodes have Jay's back, and it's time to get that win. So that's pretty a big storyline development, if you ask me. There's definitely this united front against the bloodline, what with all these baby faces, Seth, Cody, and Jay in high positions, big card positions, big matches on the card, respectively. And, they're all trying to prove a point that they are real and that they can get what they want to get done. And so, yeah, Seth says that he's behind Jay all the way, or that him and Cody are. Next up, we have main event Jay Uso taking on Shinsuke Nakamura. In the main event of the night, as I mentioned earlier, Jay takes it to Nakamura quickly to start out the match, but we have been skipping the wrestling portion, so let's get into the finish here. And there's some, kind of, WrestleMania build here that ends up with some shenanigans at the end of the match. Basically, in the ring, after the commercial break, Jay and Nakamura continue to fight. Pretty even match here. They wipe each other out with kicks until Jimmy and Solo come out with, obviously from the bloodline, come out through the crowd. They're cut off by Cody and Seth. Rhodes and Jimmy brawl to the back, and Rollins takes out Solo Sikoa. Drew McIntyre then gets involved, attacking Rollins from behind, sending him into the ring post and hitting him with the Future Shock DDT onto the floor, of all things. So we're really getting a lot of WrestleMania hype here. Really three matches colliding. Cody and his Bloodline feud right now, Seth and his Bloodline feud, Jay versus Jimmy, and then, of course, Drew and Seth. So it's really almost four matches that they're kind of booking here. But back in the ring, Jay gets out of a rear naked choke from Nakamura. Jay then hits a sleeper slam on Shinsuke and super kicks him, and then follows up with a spear for the win. I think that spear was definitely a big statement, as was this win. Again, clean win by pinfall for Jay there, but definitely some shenanigans that led to that point. And then to end the show, we have the viral moment that was talked about endlessly on the internet after the show ended. And I think it's going to be talked to ad nauseum for some time in the future, just because of how gory and hard hitting and just kind of over the top it was. And I mean that in the best of ways. So basically, here's what happened. And you probably already heard about it, but just in case you haven't, we go backstage to see Cody brawling with Jimmy Uso as he was to end that match and those shenanigans that I mentioned. Cody sends Jimmy through a door to the outside of the arena, but Solo runs in and Cody is able to stop him. But all of a sudden, after stopping Solo, The Rock actually attacks Cody from behind. Dwayne bounces Cody off of a table and throws a garbage can at his head. Then The Rock dumps some tools on him and sends Cody into a metal barricade. The Rock then says, "Look at you now. Did you think The Rock would let you talk trash?" Dwayne Johnson sends Rhodes out of the arena and into the cold Chicago rain, which I feel was very poignant for this kind of assault, really, is what it was. And you could see in the title of this show, I mentioned it, The Rock attacks Cody, just because of how brutal it was and how big of a moment that was. But yeah, it's raining, which I feel is very poignant. Sorry. The Rock says that he has Chicago's attention now after they cried about him and said nothing. The Rock rips Cody's shirt off and says that he is the final boss, which is something people have been calling him over the internet since he came back on this recent run to WrestleMania. Dwayne holds Cody near a ledge before sending him into a bus. Cody grunts in pain. The People's Champion sends Cody headfirst into trash and says that he's never going to let this piece of trash say whatever he wants. It does not have to be like this, The Rock says, and this is all because Cody stuck his nose in The Rock's business. At this point, Cody is busted open, and it obviously, this wasn't a hard blood job. This was a gig for sure. But I will say that kind of shows that maybe WWE is getting more okay with using gigs and okay with using them in angles, and they're okay with the the blading. We'll have to see how that, if they're just kind of using it sparingly, and this is one of the places that they got the green light for it. But yeah, that's definitely a change of tone for them, because blading is not something they have done for a very, very long time. They definitely discourage it in this PG era, but a gig was definitely used here. The Rock punches Cody and shows off the blood on his knuckles to the camera. And then he slaps Cody in the face to add insult to injury. Cody has a weightlifting belt with him that The Rock picks up. It says Mama Rhodes. Basically, he talks to the camera as if it were Cody's mother, tells her that he would have her son's blood on the belt and her in tears. Dwayne grabs Cody and rubs his blood on the belt. He holds up a bleeding Cody and says that this is what's going to happen at WrestleMania. Her son's blood, again, talking to Cody's mom. And he goes on to evoke Dusty Rhodes by saying that, Cody's dad talked about hard times, but Dusty never truly knew about hard times. The Rock will tell him about hard times. And he goes on to say that this is what happens when you mess with the final boss. But in another change of pace for WWE during their PG era, he actually says the F-bomb instead of mess with. So pretty big deal there. And then The Rock ends up sending Rhodes back into the bus one more time. He says that it did not have to be this way, but now it is the only way. We get one final look at Cody, disheveled, battered, bruised, bleeding, to end the show. And that's a pretty crazy ending to this. This isn't even the go home show. So the fact that they did this, the penultimate show of the WrestleMania go home, is a pretty big deal. And it says a lot of things. And, I mentioned it's changing tides in the company, but it's also just a very poignant and striking image to have as we go into not only Cody's match against Roman, but especially Cody's tag match with Seth against Rock and Roman. So yeah, pretty big deal there, and a pretty crazy way to end Monday Night Raw. So a lot of people did feel like this was one of the best episodes of Monday Night Raw in a long time, and I can't say I disagree with them. One of the best WrestleMania builds of all time, certainly, we've had over the past few weeks. So we're just going to see if the Go Home show can top that at all, and you will be getting the review for that shortly. But again, before we do that, we have to review Smackdown from 329, and we will be doing so right after this. The Marksville Wrestling Podcast is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon.com/Marksville Wrestling is where you can find the podcast early before it drops on other platforms, and it is also the home of exclusive behind-the-scenes content, Q&As, and more. If you like the show and would like to support it, please consider doing so on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Marksville Wrestling. Thanks for the support, and back to the show. Welcome back. For this portion of the show, we're going to be reviewing Smackdown from March 29th, as I mentioned earlier in the show. Obviously, this is the show that has less main event implications to it, so we will be going through this a little bit more quickly than we did the Raw review, just because I'd say the most meat came out of the episode of Raw for WrestleMania 40. Obviously the main event between Cody and Roman Reigns was covered, to say the least, on Monday Night Raw. But also that heavyweight title bout between Seth and Drew was also given ample coverage. So we are going to, kind of make this one a little bit quicker, just because there's less main event implications, like I said, on this show overall, but still a big show heading into the show of shows, the biggest, that is WrestleMania. And without further ado, let's get into the March 29th episode of Smackdown. I'm using a transcript again from WrestleView.com, but this one was written by Roy Nemmer. Go ahead and check him out on WWE Smackdown Results 329-24. That's the name of this article on WrestleView.com. This show took place at the Mohegan Sun Arena in Uncasville, Connecticut. Not sure exactly how to say that, but obviously a town in Connecticut. home of the Connecticut Sun, the women's national basketball team. WWE SmackDown kicks off with highlights of The Rock attacking Cody from last Monday on Raw, which we did mention earlier in the show. Not surprised they covered that here, just to keep building that main event momentum, because you won't get direct, super direct stuff coverage from the main event that you did on Raw. So they do have to mention it in a video package at least. So to start out the show, we show Randy Orton coming out for his match. And it's basically a tag match in which Randy Orton and Kevin Owens take on Pretty Deadly. This is obviously to build for Randy and Kevin's involvement in the triple threat for the U.S. title against holder Logan Paul, which will take place at Mania. So yeah, that's why they tag here against Pretty Deadly. Makes sense to include, tag matches like this as we get into the final week of build. The referee in the finish, the referee is distracted by some, sort of interference by Kit and Prince outside the ring. But in that time, Prince is able to hit a right hand on Randy Orton. As the ref is distracted, Logan Paul comes out from under the crowd and hits Kevin Owens with brass knuckles. Prince gets in the ring, goes for the cover, and gets the pin and win for his team, Pretty Deadly. So obviously Randy Orton, not his name, but it would be a funny alter ego if you ask me. Randy Orton gets in the ring and yells at KO, asking him what happened. He sees the highlights, then looks under the ring and is able to notice that maybe it was probably Logan Paul. Orton goes outside, the fans chant his name. He pulls Logan out from under the ring, is where he's hiding now, and basically hits him with right hand, slams him onto the barricade. He puts Logan Paul in the announce table, but Pretty Deadly actually attack Orton from the back. They throw him back into the ring, then they get into the ring and grab Orton, but Owens gets himself involved by hitting Prince with a stunner. Then Orton hits Kit with an RKO. Logan stands at ringside and Orton chases him around the arena into the crowd until Logan is able to get into his car and drive off. So looks like basically Randy and KO have some, anger with each other because of that loss heading into the match, but it actually ends up with Unity, taking out Pretty Deadly in the post-match segment. And then Logan is being pursued by Randy. So if anything, there might be a unified front for the two of them going into the show. But we will have to see how that plays out on the Go Home show proper, because that could change, of course. But nonetheless, pretty good build going into that triple threat for the U.S. title. And then we have a recorded video of Io Sky cutting a promo on Bayley. She says Bayley loves to play the victim, but that her hypocrisy is disgusting. So she knows that Bayley played a role in her being a champion, but she actually made Bayley relevant, she claims. Her and Dakota felt obligated to keep Bayley around, but then they outgrew her. And Io says there was a time where Bayley was her friend, but she regrets that time, and she will do so for the rest of her life. She hopes that after Mania, she will never see Bayley again. Some pretty harsh, strong words there from Io Sky, but this is what this feud deserves. This feud deserves big drama and big tension going into it. So after Io kind of comes out from the locker room after giving this promo, Bayley attacks her and hits her with lighting equipment, and then their fight has to be broken up by backstage staff. General Manager Nick Aldis, SmackDown General Manager, I should say, comes out to the ring holding a contract. He says that they have a monumental piece of business to do, but before that, he asks who's ready for Mania. Obviously, it's a big cheer. He believes that the acquisition of the following superstar makes a giant step toward the goal of SmackDown being the best show in wrestling. He introduces Jade Cargill, who we already knew was signed with WWE, but we didn't know what show she'd be part of. We now know it is SmackDown. Jade walks out wearing wrestling gear. She walks to the ring and gets with Nick Aldis and grabs the contract, signing it. He hands her a microphone. She says, "If you ask me, Nick, it's about damn time." Jade says that they finally put pen to paper, but let her make herself clear, she says. "We have one of the best female rosters in the world, but they are not me. They are not the headline, and they are not a once-in-a-lifetime superstar. And let me give you another weather update. The storm has arrived." So her music hits, she flexes, and she goes to the back, where we have Kayla Braxton backstage talking to Damage Control. And, before I go on this next segment, I should say pretty big appearance there by Jade Cargill. Short and sweet, but it does kind of build into maybe she's going to get involved at the Mania card here. And we will see what I mean by that later tonight in this episode of Smackdown. So Kayla Braxton backstage with Damage Control. Dakota Kai asks what Jade has done except stand there, and Bayley will be embarrassed at WrestleMania, she also mentions. The best part of SmackDown tonight will be when she beats Bianca, though. She says Bianca got into their business, and she went through 2 years of Damage Control beatdowns. If she wants the smartest, she would not have gotten involved in their business. If she was the smartest, sorry. But yeah, so, Dakota trying to tell Bianca to stay out of their business and that she's going to handle business in her match against her tonight. Nick Aldis walks backstage, bumps into Isla Dawn and Alba Fire. They try to pitch a creative idea to him, but AJ Styles breaks it up. He asks Nick if LA Knight will be there, and Aldis tells him that he should have asked LA Knight not to be there if he really had an issue. AJ tells Nick that he should have told LA not to be there and that it was not his job to ask. So there's some tension there. We're going to see maybe if that comes to a head between AJ and LA Knight at the end of the show. Or maybe if they wait until the go home show for more tension to kind of arise there. Next up, we have a Street Profits versus Austin Theory and Grayson Waller qualifying match for that tag 6-pack that I mentioned earlier in today's episode. So the finish here comes when Bobby Lashley and B-Fab are backstage, down, basically to distraction. Karrion Kross tells the Street Profits they are missing a good party right now. So Dawson walks away. Ford is distracted, but still goes for a frog splash off the top rope when Theory is able to get his knees up, then roll Montez up for the pin. So there's some stuff happening backstage, some interference. Bobby Lashley and B-Fab are obviously stablemates of the Street Profits, and they get beaten up, so that distracts them, and it allows Theory and Waller to pick up the win here. And they qualify for the 6-pack, but after this match, we see Authors of Pain, obviously aligned with Karrion Kross. They attack the Street Profits, and then Karrion Kross comes out with Paul Ellering and Scarlett. AOP attack the Street Profits. Out comes Bobby Lashley to even odds. Lashley, it's a clothesline on Karrion Kross, but AOP swarm him. Then they hold Lashley, and Kross hits him from behind, telling him that no one gets to go to WrestleMania. And I think that we can all tell people are going to go to WrestleMania, right? Like, this is going to be a match. Even though Karrion may not say that, it's going to be a match, definitely. Bobby Lashley and Street Profits versus the team of the Final Testament, which is AOP and Karrion Kross. Pretty, I'm just going to spoil it for you. They do book that later in the show, but as you can tell from the segment, it's already more or less a foregone conclusion, so I didn't feel like I had to say that. But we see a clip of last week's match between Rey Mysterio and Santos Escobar. Dominic Mysterio interfered in that match, and Legado del Fantasma come out to the ring. Santos says that he hates to be the guy that says, "I told you so," but he says not to forget that he put Rey on the shelf for months. He got to beat Rey in the center of the ring last week, and he says that Rey is the greatest lucha of all time, or that he was. So some heat there, claiming that maybe Rey is not the best luchador of all time. He says he outsmarted Rey, and all it took was one phone call to a man that despises him just like he does. And I think we can all kind of guess who that man is, but we don't get too long to, not know the answer, because it ends up being Dominic Mysterio who comes out to the ring. He's still over as a heel. He gets nuclear boos from the crowd, and shakes hands with Santos Escobar. Dominic gets in the ring. Loud boos, of course. He thanks Dominic, that is Santos Escobar, and says that he wants to apologize. He knows that they didn't see they didn't see eye to eye, but but Dominic was right, Santos says. Dominic is about to speak, and again, hushed out by boos from the crowd. Basically, he says that he will do everything in his power to make his deadbeat dad a living hell. Santos begins to talk, but Ray's music hits and he comes out with the LWO, that is the Latino World Order. All 10 wrestlers stand together in the ring. The faction of Legado del Fantasma and LWO being the 10 that stand in the ring. Ray tells Dom, what a shame. He truly believed that he was done fighting him, and the fans chant LWO to back up the older Mysterio. Ray says now that Santos has dragged him into this and Dom wants to be a part of it, he came to the realization that this moment of having them both in front of him is truly a divine intervention. Ray says now he has an opportunity to beat some respect into both of these men. Ray challenges Santos and Dominic against himself and a partner of his choosing in a tag team match against at WrestleMania. Dominic asks Ray which of these dorks is going to be the one, and Ray says it's the newest member of the Latino World Order, Dragon Lee. Out comes Dragon Lee to the ring. Zelina Vega and Elektra are face to face. Carmen taps Zelina on the head and Zelina slaps her. Santos hits a big boot onto Ray and they all fight in the ring. So yeah, that's breaking out, and now we obviously have a tag team match between Ray and Dragon Lee in the tag team of Santos Escobar and Dom Mysterio. I will say I kind of expected Dom to be involved in a Judgment Day angle or match at WrestleMania, but it looks like, I'm sure he'll still be involved with storyline type things within the Judgment Day at WrestleMania, just not in a match defending his colors. It looks like he'll be in a match actually against the LWO. So in any case, that's the match that Dom gets into for WrestleMania. I should say, I just mentioned Judgment Day, and we get some clarification on their feelings with Dom in his match coming up here after the commercial break. The Judgment Day is backstage in their clubhouse. Rhea, not Rhea. Rhea says she did not know that Dom was going to be out there. Dom actually walks into the clubhouse at this point and tells them that he wanted to make them proud and handle business. Finn asks Dominic if there's anything else he needs to tell them, but Dom says he needs to see a doctor and that JD will be taking him. Damian Priest says that this WrestleMania is too important for them as a group and as individuals. Rhea asks Priest if there's something he needs to tell her, but Finn interjects in saying the only thing is that WrestleMania will belong to the Judgment Day. So there's kind of this three-headed monster with the Judgment Day between Finn, Rhea, and Damian Priest. And, JD McDonough and Dominic Mysterio are really just those three lackeys at this point. And they're all kind of gunning for the leadership of the group, and they continue building to that with this backstage segment. Next up, we have the New Catch Republic taking on Angel and Humberto in a tag qualifier match for that six-pack. I have trouble saying that every time, but the six-pack tag team championship match at WrestleMania. Whoever wins this obviously qualifies. The finish comes when Angel hits a running knee onto both Pete and Tyler. That is, Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. Angel lifts Tyler up, but Tyler lands on his feet and hits him with a right hand. Dunne is tagged in, and they double hit him with the double Tyler driver. And they double hit Angel, I should say. At this point, Humberto is kind of out of the match, but Pete is tagged in. They double hit Angel with the double Tyler driver, like I mentioned. He goes to the cover, and the New Catch Republic get the win. So they qualify for that six-pack match. And, we have sort of the rest of that match aligned at this point. I will again run through the card before we get to the show of shows. I'll run through the card probably on my Raw Go Home show review coming up, episode 8, again on the 3rd or 4th of this week. But yeah, so New Catch Republic qualify for that match. And then we get a backstage segment with Paul Heyman, who is backstage and says that by order of the tribal chief, The Rock took out Cody Rhodes, and Jimmy says that by orders of the tribal chief, Jay won't make it to WrestleMania either. And then Solo Sikoa says that he will see Jay next week, again by order of the tribal chief in a one-on-one match on Smackdown, presumably. So pretty big, match between the two bloodline, sort of figures. One used to be in it, one is still in it, but it could take place on Monday night as well. You'll find out on my review of that show, like I said, later this week. Next up, we have AJ Styles come out talking about LA Knight building to their feud and match with each other at WrestleMania. AJ Styles basically says it's been a little bit over a week. He says the fans are the reason the LA Knight went to his house and assaulted him. So he's very much the heel here. He should have rotted in jail and missed his first WrestleMania, but AJ actually has bigger plans for LA Knight. He says that he will expose him for overachieving, that he is an under-talented piece of trash, and he guarantees that LA Knight is there and that he wants to hear from him. AJ looks at the ramp and asks LA Knight if he will come down. He calls LA Knight to the ring, and AJ says he can be up in the arena with the idiots. He can be in the cameraman for all he knows, but he will rip the headset off the cameraman until he finds LA Knight. He leaves the ring. The chants emanate from the stadium, LA Knight, LA Knight. A man in a hoodie jumps the rail and security stops him. AJ rips the hoodie off, but it's not LA Knight. AJ tells him the security to get out of here. AJ asks if they are done with the games. He says that he will not be playing anymore at WrestleMania, but the camera pans to the side and we see LA Knight wearing a wig, a hat, and glasses. LA Knight then attacks AJ and they fight into the ring. LA stomps onto AJ in the corner. He runs to the outside and grabs a chair, swings it at AJ, but Styles rolls outside and jumps the chair. LA stands on the announce table. He tells AJ to run, hide, and do anything he needs to do before WrestleMania. But, the fans know whose game it is, and it ends with everyone saying LA Knight, yeah. A video of Tiffany Stratton praising herself airs. She says carrying the burden of perfection is not easy as she makes it look. So they're probably just building her, story. I don't think she's going to get match on the WrestleMania card, but they're building for her story to continue after WrestleMania and for her to continue to get her build. Back from commercial, though, we have Bianca with a vertical suplex in her match against Dakota Kai. Getting some offense in. But it ends with a kick on Bianca by Dakota. And then Bianca moves out of the way. Dakota hits the ring post. Bianca climbs the second rope, pulls Dakota up, hits her with a suplex into the ring, and wins with a spear. A spear comes before a KOD, so there's actually a triple finisher there, more or less. Bianca climbs the rope, hits her with a suplex, then a spear, then a KOD for the finish and win. Pretty hefty win there by Bianca Belair, but the Kabuki Warriors come out and run her down. Then Naomi comes out to even the odds. She knocks down Kairi and hits Asuka, but Kairi hits Naomi from behind with a bat, so Bianca gets up, but then Dakota decks Bianca from behind, and Damage Control continue to beat down the baby faces until Jade Cargill's music hits and she walks down to the ring. Jade gets in the ring and beats Asuka down. She lifts Dakota up and hits her with a power bomb until hitting Kairi Sane and slamming her face first onto the mat. Damage Control roll to the outside as the three women, Jade Cargill, Naomi, and Bianca Belair, are standing in the ring. And I think we have a pretty likely WrestleMania match there, which again got booked announced on WWE's socials, just like that Street Profits Final Testament match did. But yeah, so it's going to be Jade Cargill, Naomi, and Bianca Belair taking on the Kabuki Warriors and Dakota Kai, the remaining pieces of Damage Control who are not in that title match between Io Sky and Bayley for the women's world championship. So yeah, they book this match. I think it should be great, and we're gonna get Jade at WrestleMania. Pretty great debut here for Jade. Even though she didn't do a whole lot, it still makes her look pretty dominant and important. And the most important part, which is get her onto the WrestleMania card. So without further ado, that's your review of the penultimate Go Home shows for the 325 Raw and the 329 SmackDown. I will be giving you the Raw Go Home show review on my my April 3rd, show. That will be episode 8. And again, that show may debut on episode April 4th, but regardless, it is going to go up before I leave for WrestleMania on episode. Why do I keep saying episode? April 4th. This is episode 7. I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll be getting plenty of content live from Philadelphia as I, just kind of take in the atmosphere and events of WrestleMania weekend. I will be sharing them with you. And again, please check into my social media channels for all that content at Marksville Wrestling and the Patreon page for exclusive content from WrestleMania 40. This is Owen. This is the Marksville Wrestling Podcast, the most positive pro wrestling show on the internet. I hope you've enjoyed, and I will talk to you all next time.